Yep, it's been a hot minute since I've been here. I had to take care of some things, and it's gotten to be where, a couple days turns into a week turns into a week and a half turns into 2 weeks. And to be quite honest, part of what I'm doing is I'm swapping and doing bench testing on the 10105F and the 11400F. But in doing that, I also wanted to go back and do some tests on the RX 6400 because I know it's been kind of shown that it has issues between PCI 3.0 and PCI 4.0. So while I am going to use that 6400 in the slimline Dell computer that I've shown previously, and I'll try to put a link or something, I did want to see how it would do if I went ahead and put it on a something that had a PCI 4.0. Which, lucky enough, with that 11400, I can try that out. So I've been going back and doing a boatload of benchmarks with that, not only on the CPUs themselves, but on the GPUs, testing it with the 6400, testing it just raw power, or just seeing how it'll do head-to-head with an RX 6600 XT in it, because that should give it plenty of room to be able to see how the CPU itself does. So I've been going back and doing a lot of those benchmarks. But in the time being, I kind of neglected Danny D, my travel computer that still is sporting 16 gig of memory, DDR4, and still has the regular ATX power supply, even though it's a small form factor box. So I wanted to give it a little bit more cooling, I wanted to give it a little more room to breathe, and I wanted to go ahead and update the memory. So that's what I'm doing today. So I got some Team Group T-Force Vulcan Z. It's not great memory, it's decent memory. I wouldn't quite call it budget, but I wouldn't call it high-end memory either. It's not Dominator, Corsair Dominator memory, but Vulcan Z, 3200 megahertz, 32 gig of it. It should do just fine. It happens to be low profile, which might also help give it a little bit more room or airflow or whatever inside Danny D. I don't know. And then Cooler Master, occasionally, as they are apt to do, and I recently bought a Cooler Master PSU, 850 watt SFX Gold, that's also modular, that will go in Danny D because it is a small form factor PSU. And you're thinking, but why did you get 850? You don't have that powerful of a system in Danny D to begin with. That's true. Danny D right now is only supporting a B450. It's got a 5600G AMD processor. It's a Ryzen, but that is only going to operate on PCI 4.0. It won't even take full advantage, probably, of the 3060 Ti that's in it, but there is a 3060 Ti in it. I probably really only need 600 or 650 watts. The reason why I got this is because, first of all, they marked it down where I could pay it in 3 months, and I thought, that's a deal. But it was cheaper than the 650 and the 750. So, it was right about the same price as the 650, but it was $5 cheaper than the 750. So I'm like, you know what? If they're going to mark it down, I'm going to buy it. And so that's what I did. So today we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to see just what kind of space I'm given, extra clearance to be able to make sure there's extra airflow in Danny D, and try to just make some progress so that you guys know that I haven't forgotten about you. So away we go. So I go to power up Danny D. I'm going to go ahead and run just a couple of tests, make sure that we'll see if we can't get a little bit better score in, say, Cinebench, and see what the temps are maybe. But I'm greeted with this, and now Microsoft is getting really aggressive trying to get you to sign up for Windows 11. No, Microsoft, I like Windows 10. 11 does not do well with AMD right now. There's a plethora of reasons why I don't want to swap, and I don't trust it, and I don't want to have a Microsoft account to use it. So guess what? I'm declining it. I'm trying to roll it back, do whatever I can. We're going to Windows 10, and that's where I'm going to do all the tests. Alright, so as you can tell, I got two slots being used, running at 3200, and it's 16 gig, so yeah, not much in doubt there. We're going to replace that, make that 32 gig, see if we can improve in performance just a little bit, and I'll show you why we're going especially to the SFX power supply instead of the ATX pretty quickly here too. So we've gotten several passes in, and it looks like 94 is about where it's sitting. Sometimes they'll drop back to 93. If we watch it here, it might do that again. But 93, 94 degrees, which isn't ideal. But there it goes again. It's not ideal, but we're sitting around 38. So, and that's after about a half dozen passes. I got it on a 10-minute test. we'll see how it looks and how it does. But it's looking like it's the temp's topping out about 93, and we're looking at 38, which is okay. Like I said, not great, but it's okay. And we'll see how it does once I give it a little bit more airflow, a little bit more memory, and just kind of see what happens. One of the cool things about this power supply is it does already include the bracket to go from ATX to SFX, and it's modular, so that means I get to use whatever cables I need to, and I can leave the other ones off. So I don't need anything like extra Molex connectors or extra SATA connectors, and I can plug in what I need to plug in, and I don't have as much clutter. So all those ketchup and mustard that were taking up the extra space in there, that goes away. The power supply itself is shrunk down, so it's probably about 60% of the size of the other one, and so I should have more airflow, less clutter, and we can see if our temps are any better. I mean, I'm hoping they're at least a little bit better. Let's knock a couple of degrees off that at least, right? The power supply itself, that's it. Yep, not very big at all. So the memory we're putting in is actually it's Team Group T-Force Vulcan Z, 3200 megahertz, 32 gig, and it's a CL16. So the timings are okay. We're not expecting a lot of extra out of this, except for just to have more room or a little bit more flexibility. When I'm doing editing or I'm doing, multitasking or something like that, it should help quite a bit. I'm not really expecting too much more to improve out of that, because 16, quite honestly, if you're playing games and all that stuff, 16 gig is pretty decent amount. You're never going to use 32 gig just playing games, but when you're doing other stuff like editing, like I do sometimes on the road, then I might need that extra. But really, all we're doing here, need a little bit of an upgrade. We're not going crazy with it, so that's why I opted for this. So we're swapping that, we're putting the power supply that we already talked about in, and let's give this a shot, huh? Alrighty, not 100% as clean of a wiring job as I would hope, but it's not too bad. And it's all secure. It does take up a lot less space. You can see a lot more clearance. There's a lot more room for the fan to get some air. I've still got the air being pulled in through the top up here. There's plenty of room in between where the hard drives are or where the SSDs are and all that. We're not fighting for PSU to have room. We're not fighting for the PSU and the CPU to be fighting with each other over try to get some air. Hopefully this will work out pretty well. We're going to go ahead and put it all back together, plug it in, and start running some tests again and see what our final numbers are. Well, the good news is we got a post. So let's go ahead and set up the memory and all that stuff and then start running our tests. Alright, so I set it up on the same repeating test as I did last time, where I was getting 93 and 94 and it'd go back and forth. And this one might drop again, might see it again. But it looks like this time it's topping out at 88 or 89 degrees, which is good. And then I'm also getting just a little bit higher scores. Not significantly higher, but I mean, it's 120 points higher, so I can't really complain about that. It's running on a loop, so we'll see what happens. We'll see if this drops back to 88 again in a second. But we're going back and forth between 88 and 89 here, and I do have a little bit higher score there. So life is not horrible. This worked out pretty well. Yep, starting another one. This worked out pretty well, so I'm pretty happy. So overall, I gotta say I'm happy. I gave the CPU more room to breathe, and I didn't do a GPU test. I didn't feel like I needed to check the temps on the GPU because it's in a different. It's all the same box, but it's in a slightly different spot, and it's not going to be nearly as much impacted or nearly impacted as much. I'm going to learn English one of these days, and I'm going to be really, really successful at it. Anyway, the CPU is in a lot more choked off point than the GPU is. The GPU has fresh air coming in from the side. The CPU was kind of trapped underneath that power supply, and so we wanted to free that up. Now what this also does, I was able to knock about 4 or 5 degrees off for the CPU running that Cinebench test, which was good, and I also increased the score on Cinebench, which was also good. Maybe a little bit to do with the temps, maybe a little bit to do with the memory, but overall, a pretty good little care package, I guess you could say, for Danny D. Now, the biggest thing about this also is if I am still concerned about the temps on Danny D on the CPU, then I can go ahead and put a slightly larger cooler. I couldn't use the regular, I believe it was the Stealth cooler that came with it, because it was so close to the power supply. There was just no room for it to have any air at all. Now I've got something where I can either use that or I can use a different aftermarket cooler if I want to. I don't have to go with that low profile Noctua. I can even use a higher end Noctua if I want to. But in any case, it has made a difference, and so I'm pretty happy with that. Is that something I'd go out and do all the time? No, not necessarily. I don't think I need it. Do you necessarily need to do something like that in your computer? You may or may not. It's just your preference, depending on what you're using your PC for. If you're just using your PC for gaming and all that, you know, between 8 and 16 gig, I would probably say 16 gig is great. If you're doing a lot of heavy multitasking, video editing, or anything like that, then yeah, 32 gig or maybe even a little bit higher, depending on what your tasks are. One of the biggest things that will benefit you, though, is making sure that CPU is cool. The cooler it gets, the better it runs. So, and that goes pretty much with anything in electronics. Anything mechanical or anything electronic, if you can keep it cooler, it'll run better. So that is all I've got for this time. I know it's not a whole lot. I know it's especially not for the length of time I've been gone. You can see I still got stuff behind me that I'm trying to organize, get figured out. I've got testing still going on with the Intel stuff that I promise I will get that out soon. Trying to get back on a schedule. We'll see how well that works. Cross your fingers, because I keep trying that and I keep getting bigger and deeper into a bigger hole. There we go. That's all I'm going to say that. Anyway, don't forget, I'm going to start getting back into this, so do all that YouTube stuff. If you liked the video, throw a like on it. If you didn't, at least kind of tell me why. Maybe it's just because you're mad because I haven't been around in a while. I'm sorry. It won't, can't say it won't happen again, because it might. Anyway, that's life, you know, everybody experiences life. Going to ask you to do one very important thing, though. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It's just be nice to somebody today, maybe tomorrow, maybe every day. Just go out and do something nice, okay? Be nice to somebody, and that's all I have for right now. So until the next time, I'll see you later.